I need to start by saying this clearly, because people always ask it first. I didn't feel suspicious. There was no gut instinct, no sudden coldness, no moment where I thought something's wrong. If anything, I thought we were good. We'd been together a little over 2 years, long enough that life didn't feel performative anymore. We didn't dress up for each other every day. We didn't narrate our feelings constantly. We existed together. That kind of comfort tricks you. We lived in a small apartment with uneven floors and thin walls. You could hear the neighbor's TV through the bathroom vent. The kitchen light flickered if you didn't hit the switch just right. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. We had routines that felt invisible because they were so normal. She always left her mug by the sink instead of putting it straight in the dishwasher. I always forgot to replace the toilet paper roll when it ran out. She liked sleeping with the window cracked open, even in winter. I liked the room dark and silent. We met in the middle without ever talking about it. She used to say I made her feel safe. Not in a dramatic way, just casually, like it was a fact. "I don't know," she once said, half asleep. "You're just steady." I took that as a compliment. We talked about the future the way people do when they assume it will happen. Not in detail, not with timelines, just references. When we have a bigger place, when we're older, when we don't live here anymore. I never felt like I was auditioning for a role in her life. I thought I already had it. That's why when people ask me now if there were signs, I always hesitate. Because hindsight is dishonest. You can connect dots that didn't exist at the time. You can turn normal behavior into foreshadowing. You can rewrite memory to make yourself feel smarter. But the truth, if I'd suspected anything, I would have acted. I didn't, and that's what still messes with me. It was a Tuesday. Nothing dramatic, nothing symbolic. We both worked late. She came home first and changed into one of my old t-shirts, the one with a small tear near the collar. She said it was more comfortable than hers. We ate leftovers, barely talked, put on a show we'd already watched before. She scrolled on her phone. I leaned back against the armrest, half listening. At some point, I asked what she wanted for dinner the next day. She shrugged. "Anything, I don't care." My phone was dead. I realized it when I tried to check the time. Without thinking, I reached for hers. That part matters. I didn't hesitate. I didn't ask. She didn't react. Her phone had always been an open thing between us. Same passcode, no rules, no tension. She didn't even look up when I picked it up. If she had flinched, even slightly, I think this story would have ended differently. I unlocked it, opened a food delivery app, and before it even loaded, a notification slid down from the top of the screen. One message, from a name I didn't recognize. No emojis, no explanation, just words. "Last night was a mistake, right?" I stared at it longer than I should have. Long enough for my brain to start making excuses for her. Wrong number. Work thing. Old friend. Inside joke I didn't understand. I felt stupid for even pausing. My thumb hovered over the screen. I almost locked the phone and handed it back. Almost. Something in my chest tightened instead. Not panic. Not anger. Recognition. The tone was wrong. People who send messages like that aren't confused strangers. They're people who already know the answer. I tapped it, and I knew. Not because of anything explicit. Not because of pictures. Not because of obvious flirting. It was worse than that. It was familiarity. The spacing between messages, the casual back and forth, the way no one explained anything because nothing needed explaining. I scrolled slowly. Late night timestamps, early morning replies, messages sent during times she told me she was already asleep, inside jokes that weren't ours, references to places she said she'd gone with friends, photos I'd never seen. Nothing sexual at first, just intimate. Two people who weren't trying to impress each other. Two people who were already past that. Then I saw it, buried between normal lines, almost easy to miss. He has no idea. My stomach dropped so fast it felt physical. I didn't breathe, didn't move, didn't blink. She was still beside me, still scrolling, still pretending the TV mattered. I locked the phone, set it down gently, and asked in what I'm told was a completely normal voice, "Pizza or Chinese tomorrow?" She didn't hesitate. Chinese. That night I barely slept. Not because I was crying, not because I was angry, because my mind wouldn't stop replaying everything that suddenly felt different. Every late night, every time she turned her phone face down, every moment she said she was too tired to talk. I hated myself for not noticing sooner. But more than that, I hated that I wanted an explanation. I didn't confront her. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not even the day after. People always assume that when you discover something like that, there's an immediate explosion. Raised voices, accusations, tears on the kitchen floor. But real life doesn't always work that way. Sometimes shock doesn't make you loud. It makes you quiet. The morning after I saw those messages, I woke up before she did. The room was dim, that bluish early light filtering through the blinds. She was turned away from me, breathing slowly, one arm tucked under her pillow. She looked peaceful. That's what hurt the most. I lay there, staring at the back of her head, thinking about how easy it would be to wake her up and say her name. How one word could shatter everything we'd built. But I didn't, because I wasn't ready for what would come after. If I confronted her, she'd deny it. If I pushed, she'd cry. If I showed her the messages, she'd apologize. And I knew myself well enough to know this. A part of me would want to believe her. I didn't want explanations yet. I wanted certainty. So I got up quietly, showered, dressed, and went to work like nothing had happened. That was the first day I learned how convincing normal can look when you're performing it. For the next few days I watched, not in a dramatic, paranoid way, more like paying attention for the first time. I noticed how often she checked her phone now, not obsessively, that would have been obvious, just enough that it registered. I noticed how she angled the screen slightly away from me when she sat on the couch. I noticed how she'd smile, not a full smile, just a small one, and then quickly smooth her face back into neutrality when she realized I was looking. These weren't crimes. If I hadn't seen the message, I would have brushed them off. That's the scariest part. Cheating doesn't always announce itself with lipstick on collars and unexplained absences. Sometimes it hides in the margins of everyday life. She still asked how my day was, still complained about her job, still used we when talking about plans. But something had shifted. It was subtle, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. This part might disappoint people. I didn't check her phone again. I didn't track her location. I didn't go digging through emails or social media. Not yet. I wanted to see what she'd do if I did nothing at all. I wanted to know if the truth would surface on its own. And it did. Just not the way I expected. 3 days after the message, she told me she'd be working late. She said it casually, like it was an afterthought. "Don't wait up," she added, slipping on her jacket. "We're behind on a deadline." I nodded, said okay, went back to what I was doing. I didn't text her, didn't ask questions, didn't check the time. I just sat there that evening, alone in the apartment, listening to the hum of the fridge and the neighbor's muffled TV through the wall. She came home around 10. She didn't smell like alcohol, didn't seem tired, didn't complain. She was energized, not overly happy, not guilty, just lighter. She kissed my cheek and went to shower. And standing there in the hallway, watching steam creep out from under the bathroom door, I felt something inside me harden. Not anger, clarity. That night, I realized something important. If this were a mistake, a one-time thing, she'd be nervous. If it were guilt, she'd be distant or overcompensating. But she was comfortable. And comfort doesn't come from accidents. It comes from repetition. People might think I was being cowardly, but the truth is, I was being careful. I'd spent 2 years building a life with her, sharing rent, sharing routines, sharing my trust. I didn't want to end that based on assumptions. I needed to know how deep this went. So I waited, and that decision would change everything. A week passed. Nothing explosive happened, which somehow made everything worse. Then one night, she left her phone in the bathroom, unlocked, face up on the counter. I stood in the hallway for a long time, just staring at it. I told myself I didn't need to look again, that I already knew enough. But there's a difference between suspicion and confirmation. And I needed confirmation. I picked it up, slowly, like it might burn me. The messages were still there. More of them now. Plans, jokes, references to moments that didn't include me. And then I saw something that made my chest ache in a way I wasn't prepared for. They weren't just talking about what they did. They were talking about me, about how easy it was, how I trusted her, how careful they had to be. Not cruel, not mocking, almost bored, like I was background noise. That's when it hit me. She wasn't confused. She wasn't torn. She had already chosen, climbed into bed next to me, and fell asleep in minutes. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe. And I knew something then. If I confronted her tomorrow, she'd cry. She'd say it meant nothing. She'd promise to fix things. And a part of me would want to stay. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to give myself that chance. Once you realize someone has already chosen a life that doesn't include you, something strange happens. You stop trying to win. I didn't feel dramatic resolve or cinematic clarity. There was no moment where I stared into a mirror and told myself I deserved better. It was quieter than that. It felt like stepping out of a room you didn't realize you'd been holding your breath in. After that night, I stopped monitoring her. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood. Knowing more wouldn't change the outcome. It would only change how much it hurt. Instead, I started noticing myself. How tense my shoulders were when she walked into a room. How carefully I chose my words. How I waited for her reactions before allowing myself to relax. That wasn't love. That was adaptation. And it scared me how naturally I'd slipped into it. I didn't pack immediately. I needed time to think, to make sure I wasn't acting out of wounded pride. So I went about my days normally. Went to work, made small talk, was polite, was kind, but internally I was organizing my exit. What I needed, what I could leave behind, what mattered enough to carry. I opened a new note on my phone and started listing things quietly. Documents, chargers, clothes I actually wore. The mug she'd bought me on a trip we once took together, I left that off the list. Not everything deserves to come with you. There was an odd calm in knowing I was leaving. Arguments stopped bothering me. Silences didn't feel heavy anymore. When she complained about work or talked about future plans, I listened like a guest. Present, but not invested. She noticed eventually. "You've been distant," she said one evening, sitting across from me on the couch. I shrugged. "Just tired." She studied my face for a second longer than usual. Then she nodded. That was it. She didn't push, didn't ask questions, didn't try to pull me back. And that confirmed everything. I chose a Thursday. No special reason. Just a day that felt neutral enough not to give it meaning. She was out again. Another late night. Another casual goodbye. I waited until I heard the door close. Then I packed. Not frantically. Not angrily. Methodically. Each item folded carefully. Each drawer closed quietly. It felt like dismantling a life piece by piece without making a sound. I left the apartment exactly how it was. The bed made. The dishes done. The lights off. My bag sat by the door like punctuation. She came home later than usual. When she saw the bags, she stopped. "What's going on?" she asked. Her voice wasn't panicked yet. Just confused. "I know," I said. That was all. For a moment, she tried to pretend she didn't understand. "Knew what?" she asked. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Her face changed. It wasn't fear. It wasn't guilt. It was calculation. "How long?" she asked finally. "Long enough." She cried. Of course she did. She apologized. She said it didn't mean anything. She said she was confused. She said she never meant to hurt me. I listened. And when she finished, I said something that surprised both of us. "I believe you." She looked relieved. Then I continued. "I believe you didn't mean for it to matter. That's why it does." She didn't understand that part. I didn't explain. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't insult her. Didn't list evidence. I picked up my bags. She asked where I was going. "Somewhere I won't have to wonder," I said. She followed me to the door. She asked if this was really it. I paused, hand on the handle. And for a second, just one, I thought about how easy it would be to stay. To try again. To negotiate. To rebuild something already hollow. Then I opened the door. The hallway smelled like cleaning solution and stale carpet. I stood there for a moment longer than necessary. Not because I was unsure, but because endings deserve acknowledgement. Then I walked away. I thought leaving would feel like relief. That once the door closed behind me, something inside would finally loosen. That I'd breathe easier, sleep deeper, feel lighter. That didn't happen. What happened instead was silence. Not the peaceful kind. The hollow kind. The kind that doesn't announce itself, but follows you from room to room. I stayed with a friend that night. He didn't ask questions, just handed me a blanket and pointed to the couch. I stared at the ceiling until morning. Not replaying the argument, because there wasn't one, but replaying the normal moments. The way she used to hum when she brushed her teeth. The way she'd steal my hoodie and pretend it was accidental. The way she'd say my name when she was half asleep. Those are the memories that ambush you. Not the betrayal. The comfort. Days passed. She didn't text, didn't call, didn't ask where I was or what I was thinking. At first, that made me angry. Then it made me uneasy, because I'd expected panic, regret, desperation. But what I got was acceptance, and that hurt more than anger ever could. Mutual friends noticed first. Everything okay between you two? Haven't seen you around lately. I kept my answers vague, just taking some space. Things got complicated. I didn't want to be the one to define the ending out loud, somehow saying it would make it permanent. A week after I left, my phone buzzed. Her name. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. I didn't think you'd actually leave. I thought we'd talk. I miss you. I read it 3 times. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I was looking for something else. Responsibility, ownership, anything that acknowledged what she'd done. It wasn't there. She missed me, but she didn't regret losing me. And those aren't the same thing. I didn't reply. Something became clear in those days alone. If I'd stayed, I would have been the one constantly trying to rebuild trust that she hadn't protected. I would have become smaller, more cautious, more accommodating, and eventually I wouldn't have recognized myself. Leaving didn't make me brave. It just stopped me from becoming someone I didn't want to be. There's a moment after betrayal that no one warns you about. When you stop wondering what they're doing and start wondering who you are without them. That's the part that lingers. That's where the haunting begins. The grief didn't arrive all at once. It came in waves so small at first that I almost didn't notice them. I'd be fine for hours, productive, distracted, even calm, and then something insignificant would knock the air out of me. A song we used to play in the kitchen. A brand of coffee she liked. A joke that only made sense if she was there to hear it. Grief isn't loud when it first shows up. It waits until you're unguarded. What surprised me most wasn't missing her. It was missing the version of myself I was with her. The one who believed in permanence. The one who assumed trust was mutual. The one who didn't question quiet moments. And then came the guilt. Not guilt for leaving. Guilt for not fighting. I started wondering if I'd taken the easy way out. If walking away quietly was actually avoidance dressed up as dignity. If I owed her a chance to explain herself fully. These thoughts didn't come from her. They came from me. I caught myself rewriting the past, downplaying the betrayal, emphasizing the good moments, convincing myself that maybe I'd misunderstood the depth of what happened. That's what loss does. It turns clarity into something negotiable. I'd replay conversations and ask myself, was I too cold? Was I unfair? Did I expect too much? And then I'd remember the message. He has no idea. That sentence became my anchor. Whenever doubt crept in, I returned to it. Because people who care don't protect secrets that way. I ran into her by accident one afternoon. A grocery store. The kind of place where life insists on continuing no matter what just broke. She looked fine. Not devastated. Not glowing. Just normal. She smiled when she saw me. A small, careful smile. We exchanged a few words. Nothing heavy. Nothing honest. How have you been? Good, you? Yeah, busy. That was it. As I walked away, I realized something unsettling. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel anger. I felt like I'd met a stranger who knew too much about me. That night, I lay awake again. But this time, the question wasn't about her. It was about me. Why did I stay as long as I did? Why did comfort feel safer than truth? Why did I need certainty before allowing myself to leave? And deeper than that, why did I equate love with endurance? In the quiet weeks that followed, something shifted. I stopped waiting for her message, stopped imagining apologies, stopped rehearsing conversations that would never happen. I began to accept something uncomfortable. Closure isn't something someone gives you. It's something you stop asking for. The hardest truth arrived slowly, then all at once. She didn't destroy the relationship. She revealed it. And if I'm honest, I don't think I was the only one pretending everything was fine. I didn't expect to hear about her again. That was the strange part. Once the initial shock faded and the routines of my new life began to form, I assumed she'd quietly disappear into the past. That she'd become one of those stories you tell only when prompted, softened by time and distance. But life doesn't always respect neat endings. It was a random afternoon when my phone buzzed with a notification I didn't recognize. A name I hadn't seen in years. Someone loosely connected to her life, not mine. We exchanged maybe 3 sentences total in the time I'd known her. Hey, this might be weird, but I thought you should know something. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Another part, the part that still carried unanswered questions, tapped it open. They didn't waste time. She's not doing well. She keeps saying she thought you'd come back. She told people it was just a phase and that you were being dramatic. I felt a familiar tightening in my chest. Not sadness, not anger, recognition. What unsettled me wasn't that she was struggling. It was how she framed it. In her version of events, nothing really happened. There was no betrayal, no line crossed, just a misunderstanding, just space, just a man who left too quickly. I realized then that we weren't just living separate lives now. We were remembering different realities, and hers didn't include accountability. For a brief moment, I wanted to respond, to explain, to clarify, to defend myself against a version of me that felt incomplete and unfair. But then I caught myself. Why did I still need to be understood by someone who hadn't tried to understand me? Why did I feel responsible for correcting a story I was no longer part of? I didn't reply. That night, I sat alone with a thought that refused to leave. What if she really believed it? What if, in her mind, the betrayal was small enough to forget? What if she genuinely didn't see what she'd done as enough to lose me? That idea disturbed me more than intentional cruelty ever could. Because it meant the harm wasn't an accident. It was invisible to her. In the weeks that followed, I noticed how the experience bled into other parts of my life. I questioned people's intentions more carefully. I listened harder than I spoke. I paid attention to what wasn't said. Trust, once broken quietly, doesn't shatter. It thins, and you don't notice how fragile it's become until you try to rely on it again. One evening, while scrolling mindlessly, I stumbled across something unexpected. A photo. She was in it, smiling, standing next to someone I recognized immediately. The name from the messages. They looked comfortable, casual, unhidden. The post wasn't new. It had been there for weeks. I'd just never gone looking. And that's when the final piece settled into place. She hadn't lost anything. She'd simply transitioned from secrecy to openness, from one life to the next. And the thing that haunted me most wasn't jealousy. It was how easily I could have stayed, believing in something that no longer existed. That night, I didn't feel broken. I felt finished, not healed, not triumphant, just done. Because the hardest lesson wasn't learning she'd betrayed me. It was realizing that leaving when I did was the only moment I chose myself without negotiation. Time doesn't heal everything. It just stretches the silence, giving you the illusion of closure. Months passed. I settled into routines again, rebuilt my apartment, found new playlists, started going to the gym. Friends noticed the change, quieter, more deliberate, less impulsive. But underneath the surface, something remained. A small, persistent ache. Not for her, not for what we had, but for the life I thought I was living before I realized it was already over. The strangest thing was how ordinary it all became. I'd pass her on social media, not intentionally, just an accidental scroll or a mutual friend's post. She looked fine, happy even. No dramatic posts, no desperate apologies, no sad declarations about loss, just life. And that was what made it haunting. She had moved on completely. And I realized, maybe I never fully belonged there either. Even now, sometimes at night, I find myself thinking about it. Was I wrong for leaving quietly? Would a confrontation have changed anything? Or did I do the only thing that could protect me, my sanity, my dignity, my future? Those questions linger, because there is no answer that feels complete. Not yet, anyway. People tell you moving on is about anger or closure. They lie. It's not anger. It's not confrontation. It's learning to exist in a world where what you thought was solid was. It's realizing that sometimes the right thing is invisible, uncelebrated, and quiet. And maybe that's why it sticks. I thought leaving was the ending. But endings are rarely clean. I still see her in my dreams sometimes, not doing anything wrong, just being present, laughing at a joke I can't hear, smiling without realizing I'm watching. And every time, I wake up with the same thought. Some stories never fully end. They linger in memory, in the quiet moments, in the small decisions you'll never explain. And maybe that's what makes them unforgettable. I didn't rage. I didn't beg. I didn't demand answers. I left quietly, carefully, completely. And in doing so, I preserved myself. But the emptiness left behind, that doesn't disappear. It follows you. Silent, persistent, haunting,